Dear Professor Galtung, thank you for dropping by on your short visit to Norway.
Pleasure. But I couldn't make it to Tromsø, unfortunately.
No, I understand that, but we're very happy that you would give some information to send. As we have passed from 2017 to 2018, there has been a lot of concern for the perceived tension between Norway and Russia, especially from people in the northern region of Norway. Since there hasn't been that much of violence before, relatively peaceful with Russia, how did we do that? Is there anything from before that we can use in the situation today?
Well, it's a long and complicated question, like most social questions. And you see, I could say, let us go back to 395 to get a beginning. Unfortunately, we have to do that. You see, what happened in 395 set the tone for what we experience today. And that was the division of the Roman Empire in two parts. The Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. And it was done along religious line. The Western part was Catholic and the Eastern part was Orthodox. They were both Christians, but two different Christianities. One might say, although the present Pope, together with the present Patriarch of the Orthodox Church, have agreed in a recent statement that there are not two Christianities, there are one and the same. Now, in saying that, they excluded the evangelical Christianity, the Lutheran evangelical. And that is what we find, you see, in northern Germany, in the Nordic countries, in England, not in Ireland, it's Catholic, Irish Catholic, and in the United States of America. And our little country, Norway, is a part of that one. So religiously, we are, in a sense, neither Catholic nor Orthodox, but evangelical. And the United States calls its religion national evangelism.
I see.
And there are those like me who say that often it sounds more national than evangelical. Now, having said that, we have a sort of little map of Christianities, which is indispensable. And then after 395, when the tone was set, there was a confirmation, the so-called schism in 1054, where the Catholic Pope in the western part and the Orthodox Patriarch in the eastern part declared each other satanic, excluding from Christianity. They excluded each other and saw each other as Satan's ilk, I-L-K. Now, that was tough and that was strong. And we are living in the aftermath of that, or if I should put it this way, we are living on a long historical wave between West and East, between Catholic and Orthodox. And the Orthodox part of Europe developed not only its own Christianity, but its own writing. Greek alphabet in Orthodox Greece. Greece has also a Catholic part, but the Greek alphabet. The Cyrillic alphabet, which is a derivative by two monks, Kyrillus and Methodos, were the names of the monks. Kyrillus, who developed the Cyrillic alphabet, the Russian alphabet, which is also used in Bulgaria and in the Russian part of Ukraine. And you see, Ukraine becomes basic because the name Ukraina, Ukraina in Russian means at the border. It's a very accurate name.
Division lines.
I know only one country that has an equally accurate name, and that's our own. Norweger, the road to the north. Ukraina, at the border, between what and what? Between Catholic and Orthodox. So it is Catholic in the west and in the south. And it is Orthodox in, the north, and it is Orthodox in the east and in the south, around Odessa. In other words, there is no quite clear line through Ukraine that divides it in two. Everybody knows where they are, but the solution, of course, is a federal state. It's a federation of one state with two nations. But the two nations will live a little bit around each other and be more like sort of archipelagos at times. But that's today totally possible. So there is a solution, to put it that way.
So as it seems to me, because of this history, we have conflicts today that we try to solve without the historic awareness, or?
In that history, one can clearly say that there have been three major attacks by the West on the East. And the West, more particularly, were the so-called Teutonic Knights, who were carriers of Catholic Christianity into the Eastern Territory, into the Baltic states, Poland, way into Ukraine. And then, of course, the two famous Western psychopaths, Napoleon and Hitler. I say psychopaths using the technical definition, narcissism and paranoia. In other words, exceptionally high views of themselves and feeling of being persecuted and that the world is insecure and ganging up against them. Napoleon and Hitler met those bills. So they attacked Napoleon in 1812 and Hitler in 1941, Operation Barbarossa. They attacked. Now, how about Russian attack or Soviet-Russian attack on the East? Well, when I wouldn't say attack, but I would say the following, and it's important to know it. Nothing happened up in northern Norway except in 1944 when the Red Army was following, persecuting, driving out the Germans from Russia via Finland into northern Norway. Sweden was neutral, as we know. So they had to squeeze up into northern Norway, quite a lot of them actually. They were driven up there, and the Russians pursued them across the border into northern Norway. Then the government in Norway, in London, said stop. They were much more afraid of the Russians using this as a pretext to occupy northern Norway than they were actually afraid of the Germans. The Russians stopped immediately. The Red Army, they stopped and made it possible for the retiring Germans to burn off northern Norway to the point of cutting telephone cables into pieces of 20 centimeters. All of that happened because the Russians were not permitted to pursue them. Now that's a heavy burden on Norwegian history, and Norway has not been able to come to grips with it. So I have put it in clear terms, and it's the way I look at it. I think it would have been to our advantage to say to the Russians, will you please help us? We will be landing our troops. We will try to. But will you please help us? Drive them out of northern Norway on the condition that you withdraw afterwards immediately. They could have done that. But let us now make very clear, in the period, in the historical period, with this one very ambiguous exception, there hasn't been a single Russian attack on Norway. I would say there hasn't been a Norwegian attack on Russia either. There was Olav Tryggvason, the Norwegian king. But he had a very complex background, you see, partly Irish Catholic, partly Russian Orthodox. He was actually, in a sense, more Irish and Russian than Norwegian. And for that reason was not a bad Norwegian king. He was kind of bridging the two realities, Olav Tryggvason. But we are talking about...
But he took on Russia?
He partly grew up in Russia, in Novgorod.
I see.
In Novgorod. And you see, this is a part of the idea that Novgorod is partly Norwegian, which Quisling was building on, because Vidkun Quisling went to Hitler and tried to have Hitler promise that when Hitler had won the war, then Novgorod would be Norwegian. And Hitler got furious. Absolutely furious, and said, I think we have to win the war first. Because peace people say he was crazy. Well, he was crazy, but he was also pretty realistic. And he knew that he was in bad shape. He was hoping on the Vergeltungswaffen, the retaliation weaponry, V1 and V2, hoping for that. We are talking back now in 1944. Hoping for that, but they turned out to be not so effective as he had hoped. Anyhow, what happened was what we know. He committed suicide and lost the war. Suicide 30 April 1945, and lost the war 7 May or 8 May or 9 May, depends a little bit on how we are counting. But that period it was. I remember myself dancing in the streets of Oslo, 14 years old, dancing and burning the hated things that we had to put for the windows in order to let out no light that could guide British bombers. Blendingsgardiner in Norwegian. Were we burning? And was I dancing? 14 years old. Okay, that's a little bit personal, but you see, the net conclusion of what you said, there has been no
more aggression from the western side to east than the other way around, and still we are afraid of Russia.
For a very simple reason. Very simple reason. When you attack somebody, you may be afraid of him. And you're afraid of him because you think he may take revenge. And sometimes he does. You see, the remarkable thing was, if we go back to 1812, the horrible Napoleon invaded with an army of 600,000. 60,000 survived, 10%. And they survived, and they were pursued by the Tsar's army, who of course were shooting them from behind all the time. And they were pursued and pursued until they ended up in Paris, also the Tsar's army, that occupied Paris for a very short period, and then withdrew. And then withdrew. That's the point. But when you think of how many they had killed, and then you make a jump to Hitler, and, well, it is reported, reputed, that in the period from the Hitler attack 1941 to 1945, the end of the war, Russia, Soviet Russia at the time, Soviet Union, lost 27 million people. Right. If you lose 27 million, much of it was hunger, starvation, because of the boycott, because of the siege of Leningrad, the siege of Moscow, trying to prevent food from coming in. If you do that, maybe you might like some revenge. Well, they haven't done it. They haven't done it, you see. And so after 1945, what happened? They were a part of the alliance against Nazi Germany, and they got one zone of Germany, Eastern Germany, and one part of Berlin, originally one zone of Austria, but that was very soon united in 1955, and one part of Vienna. In other words, they behaved like good allies together with United States, England and France.
And also after the Second World War, there has been a lot of issues between Norway and Russia that has been handled very talentful. There are situations with the oil, with organizing the borders. So there's so many situations.
That of course is recent history, but if you look at these 1,000 years of history, from 1,000 to 2,000, what happened across that border was trade. Trade, trade, trade. The Russians came with furs and skins and metals, gold at times. They were rich, they had things. And the Norwegians had, what shall I say, fish, food products, quite a lot of it, and other things. I see it as 1,000 years of trade relations. Trade relations and pomor trade, and the relation was peaceful. There were, practically speaking, no incidents of any kind. And of course now in the midst of this you have Kirkenes,
Yes.
which is maybe the city, definitely in Norway, but one of the cities in the world where the highest percentage of the population are spies. From both sides, spying on each other and also spying on the spies on the other side. So you have a business relation there, and I think the hotels in Kirkenes make good business out of espionage. But apart from that, there's nothing serious happening of any kind. Nothing. The relationship is perfectly peaceful.
So could it...
There is absolutely no proof of any plan of Russia to take over Norway or anything of the kind. So this spin. And that spinning is done, I think, essentially in the US. And the US has Russia on top of its enemy list. Now, if you look at the size of the US Army, an enemy is indispensable. But it has to be a strong one. And Russia is big, the biggest state in the world. Population, well, let us say 190,000 altogether, but pure Russians, maybe 92,000. Not quite sure about these figures, nor are they. And nuclear power. And a very, very gifted scientific establishment because of the Academy of Science. And the Soviet, today Russian Academy of Science has been underestimated in the West. I have given talks in several branches of the Academy myself. I've met many academics, akademiki, been to Akademogorod, the academic city, which is way into Russia. You see, they differ from our scientists. Our scientists are specialists, and they are very, very good in their field. A Russian academic, in the sense of being a member of this club, is a very versatile generalist who talks a number of languages, in addition to being a specialist in his field. A deeply cultured person. I cannot say that to American scientists I know. They're extremely good in their field, it's full stop.
So maybe in other areas they had the shock, like in pedagogy, when they found Vygotsky's work, which were very advanced in comparison with the Europe thinking.
Very, very important.
Yes.
Very important.
So
I think pedagogy for them was not only something for schools, it was something for the relation to the people. How do you raise the people educationally?
That's an important
Not
difference.
necessarily in school, but outside of school too. As you understand from the way I talk, first of all, I have been there many times. I've been 25 times to Soviet Union and Russia. I know it from inside out. And also I have a relation which most people don't have.
No, just
If
talking
you
about.
turn your eyes a little bit, you look at the painting of the Galtung family. Now
Yes.
that is Admiral Lauritz Galtung, my 6th great-grandfather, and he was an admiral in the Danish-Norwegian army.
I see.
If you look to the right, you will see to the extreme right his German-born wife from a nobility family, the Grabov family. But in between them you see 5 children.
Yes.
The first one is a son, the eldest son, who died young. The second one is Johan Vincent Galtung, and I'm named from him.
Wow.
And then come the 3 daughters, and the daughter to the right, the eldest one, she went to Russia. And she is the great-great-great-great-great-grandmother of Alexander Pushkin. Pushkin,
Wow.
not only the poet of Russia, but the prophet of Russia.
So you really know them inside out.
Being related in a very indirect way to Pushkin, you can imagine the status it gives me in Russia.
Of course.
Quite something.
Yes.
Quite something. So
I understand you have optimistic view, and that keeping up with the trades and continue with building relations.
I'm not saying I have an optimistic view. I'm not
you
saying
don't,
that.
because
I
of
don't,
the
the
forces.
problem is not in Russia, the problem is in the United States of America, and the problem is in Norway being a client state of the USA. United States of America, given the size of its army, needs an enemy.
Yes.
It has to be a credible enemy. That enemy, given the size of the nuclear arsenal in the United States of America, has to have nuclear weapons. Russia meets 2 bills. Then you have to construct Russia as an enemy. And you build on 395, 1054, the things I mentioned from the past. You build on that tradition. You don't build on facts. And the fact is, yes, there have been wars. We attacked them. They did not attack us. Then you can say, but they had the Bolshevik Revolution. Yes, they had the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. They have just been celebrating it. And I myself had a big program in Moscow where I was commenting, I think in a quite sort of historically informed way, on the impact of the Bolshevik Revolution and its significance in the Nordic welfare states. Enormous impact. I'll just say a couple of sentences about it, since we are now talking about Norway, Russia. It has to be done. Remember the point that there was the International and the Second Communist International. It was strong, and it was meeting in Moscow. And it came out of a tradition. And the tradition of communism was from the Paris Commune. It was not communism, but communism. The Paris Communism. And it was there they made the song The International, about the brothers of the world and all of that kind of thing. And that song was made by a French poet, and I think the tune is French too. It's all French because it comes from the Commune de Paris, 1870, 1871. So as I said, it's communism, not communism. Now, this of course is unknown to many people, and I don't accuse the United States of knowing history. We'd never accuse them of that. They know at most 4 years their own administration, and what is before that is history already. And they have some ideas in the next administration. They will want to gain it and continue. But their time perspective is short. The Russian time perspective is very long. They fathom all of this. And Norway has taken over much of the American way of thinking, unfortunately. So
So
Then you had the recent meeting, 55 minutes, between the Norwegian Prime Minister and Trump.
mhm.
And she had been given 55 minutes, and it looks like a love affair. She was entirely taken in by him. Now, who is Trump? Trump is a psychopath. He is simply a declared unleveled person, which is the polite American term for mental disorder. He suffers from autism, and more particularly from narcissism, much too high image of himself, and paranoia. And you can see it. I mean, who says about himself, I am a stable genius? Not only a genius, but a stable one. Who finds enemies everywhere? If you ever want a case of narcissism, paranoia, look at the present president of the United States. Now, how could he become a president? Well, my theory is very simple, because the United States suffers from exactly the same. Narcissism, a much too high image of itself, and paranoia, feeling they have enemies everywhere, ganging up against them. So we have narcissism, paranoia at the collective level, finding narcissism, paranoia at the individual level, Trump, as long as it lasts. They are now going down to get it.
So it seems that the relation to Russia is not so much between Norway and Russia, but about what is happening elsewhere in the world, and taking into account
That's what I'm saying. It's not a relationship between Norway and Russia, it's a relationship between the United States and Russia, and Norway following that. But be careful now. It is Eastern Norway with Oslo. Northern Norway knows too much about it. They have only good relations because the trade that I was talking about reached not only Kirkenes but down to Tromsø and further on to Trondheim. The trade relation. Let us say Northern Norway. Let us say that. Let us say that Trondheim is a kind of, it should actually, in my view, be the capital of Norway. It's in the center of Norway. It is neither northern, nor southern, nor western. And it was once the center of Norway under the name of Nidaros. It was to Nidaros people came from all over the world. They came. Pilgrims flocking, some on their knees. And to go on pilgrimage up the Gudbrandsdalen and Østerdalen in wintertime must have been relatively tough.
Yes, I suppose.
But anyhow, they did it, it happened. Then you have Western Norway, and Western Norway is exactly that, Western Norway. It is oriented towards, to start with it, the Faroe Islands. And of course, to England, making a jump over Ireland, too Catholic to them, for them in a sense, to National Evangelical United States of America. With Iceland, was in the same league together. So today you find Iceland and Norway as the two members of the former EFTA, the European Free Trade Association, with Switzerland and Liechtenstein. Interesting.
It is.
And what I'm saying now, Synove, is history. You have to know history a little bit to see it. History is with us, and history has a sort of grip on us.
It gives quite a different picture.
If you don't understand that grip, you are a slave of history. If you understand it, you can liberate yourself.
So, to close up our talk here, would any suggestion, what could, as me, ordinary people do, what can we do to make a better situation?
Norwegian, Russian NGOs, non-governmental organization. You have some organization, whatever it is, the Dentist Association in Tromsø. Find the Dentist Association in Novgorod and make a brotherhood. In Novgorod, or wherever it might be, in Omsk and Tomsk, or, you know, of course, in Murmansk, Arkhangelsk, because they are nearby. Murmansk-Arkhangelsk.
Yes.
So the NGO link would be very important. Trade. Continue the trade relation. There is now the idea of boycott.
Yes.
Refuse it. That idea comes from Oslo, comes from United States via Oslo.
It doesn't seem like a good idea.
Doesn't make any sense at all.
No.
Doesn't make any sense. I mean, these are neighboring countries and we have a right to be neighbors. And as I said, we have 1,000 years of good relations. If you forget 1,000 years and
Yes.
only think of some recent statements where Russia today has reacted to what? To NATO
Western
coming up to
aggression.
its borders.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, Finland and Sweden are still neutral. You may talk about leaning towards the West and so on, but they're still neutral, non-aligned. But if you look at the Baltic states, they're members of NATO. If you look at
Yes.
Poland, it's member of NATO. Look at Bulgaria, member of NATO. They didn't like being it, but they are. In other words, NATO is pressing towards the east. And they did their very best, the Americans, to get Ukraine as a member and Georgia as a member. But Georgia changed presidency and the new president had a very different opinion about that. He wants an independent Georgia with good relations to Russia. But don't let us go into details with that, they're complicated. I'm only saying it is NATO that's going east. And at the end of the Cold War, there was a meeting, a very famous meeting. And it was between the American leader, Reagan, and the Russian leader. And the point about it was that they promised simply the following. We in the Soviet Union we dissolve the Warsaw Pact and we withdraw from Eastern Europe, expecting you to not follow suit. And the hope was expressed to do the same. And of course, the Soviet leader was Gromyko. Now, that was a historic meeting. So then comes this American senator who says, the Cold War is over. Who won it? We did. We did.
Not a good statement for continuously.
Precisely, and he then pointed out that statement was a verbal declaration. It was not made in writing. We are not bound by it. Well, it was a word of honor. It was a word of honor. And that pledge the United States broke. Whereupon they start getting the countries in Eastern Europe into NATO. And here it has to be remembered that they, of course, are afraid of Russia. Because they were Nazi, with the exception of Poland. They were all Nazi at the period. And were a part of the Nazi invasion under German heading, under Nazi German heading in 1941. They are, of course, afraid of revenge. So they, of course, want the protection that I think a NATO can offer them. At the same time that they thereby become sort of members of the West and they become members of the European Union. And not so long time ago they were of the Nazi German alliance. Again, with the exception of Poland. But then it has to be remembered, a very important thing, has to be remembered that the German invasion of Russia in 1812 under Napoleon, in 1939 41, and came through in 1812, in 1914, and in 1939, in other words, under Napoleon, the First World War under Hitler, came through Poland.
I see.
It doesn't mean that Poland was a party to the invasion, it only means that Poland was the corridor they used. It came through Poland. You could also say Poland let it happen, by and large. Now, all of this is more complicated than I portray it now, but by and large. So, the Polish situation is also complicated, and they are now members of NATO. They are firmly Catholic, and they have made the jump from a communist economy to a capitalist economy. The jump has been very painful for some people, so one can imagine. Lots of poverty, lots of Norwegian support, trucks going with food, lots of it. Also partly for political reasons, because Poland had to succeed. So, not by that belittling the humanitarian reason. So, there we are, in a complex relationship.
Well, thank you very much for this historical map you have drawn, because it seems very important to have this as a background while looking at the situation today.
We can hope that Oslo would come to its senses and understand that Norway is not being used, is now being used by United States. They are putting bases in Norway now. At Rygge, at Værnes, Trondheim, and in inner Tromsø. And you have American soldiers using Norwegian facilities. In other words, Norway lets itself be used in what the United States, of course, would claim is a defense against Russia. Could also be the preparation for an attack against Russia.
And certainly could be perceived like that from the eastern side.
Precisely.
That is also dangerous.
Precisely. So. Could also be. It's ambiguous.
Yes.
It's ambiguous, and I don't think Oslo does anything to resolve that ambiguity by changing the Norwegian military defense completely.
Yes.
From a defense, based on defending the coast and the home guard, Hjemmeværnet, militia, to a defense only based on F-35, F-16, on long-range bombers.
Which are American.
Precisely. And you see, in doing that, Norway has also made itself extremely vulnerable. Extremely vulnerable.
So it seems we have put ourselves in a bad
Russia
situation.
wanted to occupy Norway, they wouldn't come through Kirkenes, they could come by navy, and there is no longer any coastal artillery to take care of those ships. So, Synove, what is my plan for defense of Norway? I'm not a 100% pacifist, but I'm a 100% defensive defense person. It should be defense that couldn't be used for attack. If I were Minister of Defense of Norway, not very likely position for me in the future, I would say, point one, coastal artillery. We have a very long coast. You build the coastal artillery into mountains, you make them as invulnerable as possible, and we have lots of mountains along that long coast. And they have a range, they can sweep like that, and the next one sweeps like that, and like this, and you can cover the whole coast easily. Point two, Hjemmeværnet, militia. In the 249 militia districts in Norway, out of which today there is money for only one.
Wow, that's quite a change.
248.
Over how short a time span did this happen? We
have made ourselves defenseless.
Yes.
And the third thing I would have is, of course, non-military defense, civil disobedience. and training populations so that they know what to do in case the coastal artillery, the militia, should not work well, and the enemy still will occupy Oslo and other central parts. What do you do then? I would say that the Norway based on that, coastal artillery, strong militia, hjemmeværende, and knowledge of non-military defense, civil disobedience and all of that, will be inconquerable. Nobody would like to attack it.
But it also seems there should be a point 4 to be aware of the history. It seems really important to understand what has been going on before and how we perceive it has something to do with what will happen in the future.
Essential.
Yes.
Absolutely essential. 395, the division of the Roman Empire. 1054, the confirmation of it. Remember, Catholic to the West, Orthodox. The Orthodox developing their own languages, making them even more strange looking, if you will.
Yes.
Then come the Teutonic Knights invading eastward. Then, of course, Napoleon 1812, Hitler 1941. Quite a lot, eh? Quite a lot. How much can you take? So,
Really
not so strange that in the West there is this
thought of revenge.
we have attacked them so many
revenge.
times, they must be preparing revenge now. Answer, they don't. But they had the Bolshevik Revolution and communism in the Bolshevism, or whatever you would call it, caught on, because it was the answer to many problems. And you've got the Communist Party in Norway. The Norwegian Labour Party distanced itself from it because it knew it would have no chance to get into government unless it at the same time was a declared democratic party. So Einar Gerhardsen, whom I happen to know very well personally, very, very well, embracing him very many times. He invited me to talk in the Arbeidersamfunnet, the Labour Society, several times, and one of my talk was, I kind of think, politically quite important.
I see.
Quite important. And it was Einar Gerhardsen behind it. Now he, you see, that guy, kept his admiration not for the Bolshevik Revolution, but for the 5 years plans, the Petiletka. That it was possible to plan and to raise the level of those at the bottom in a period of 5 years.
I see.
They got into power 1935-36, the first 5-year plan was up to 40. He copied that. And for that reason you still have planning in Norway. Even under the conservative government you have planning. It's not only a so-called free market system, it's market
Very
plus plan.
fascinating.
Quite interesting.
Well, thank you so much for shedding light on all of this. It certainly will be a interesting and useful background for further discussions and a good map for the future.
I try to share the little I know with as many as possible. What you have some knowledge for, unless to share it with others.
Thanks a lot. So not
You're so
quite
welcome.
optimistic and not pessimistic, but very realistic, and there are things to be done.
Realism in your head, idealism in your heart, hand in hand.
Thanks a lot.